we've been around the country, of course, visiting a lot of people, listening to a lot of MeSH sufferers and their families. We've then had the oral evidence, which you came last time and gave us oral evidence. And so we've been trying to start always with the patient groups, families first. And then we felt it very appropriate that we should finish the oral hearings, the formal part of our meetings, with the patient groups, the families. So this is what we're doing now. And then, of course, we will then go away and think very deeply about what we've been told and write our report. So for the point of view of, and you know the system that we're being screened today, and it'll go onto our website. So if formally you could start by saying who you are and why you're here, your organisation, so that it's on the camera, so that people will then know the context of this particular session. Is that all right?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so if you'd like to start, and then Joanne, you say who.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm really like. I think it's warm in here as well. My name's Candia McCullough. I'm the founder and trustee of MeSH UK Charitable Trust. We started off as a Facebook group because we were being stifled in secret closed groups. We didn't feel like we could voice what we were going through, like there was a control or something. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I'd never done it before, I never had a group before, and I just set up this group because I figured that we needed a platform to be heard. We needed to be a public group. I was very sure on that. I needed to be a public group. I didn't really know what was going on for me. It was a journey, so I didn't really have definitive answers at that point. But I figured that we needed to all come together somehow and be able to discuss everything. Nothing hidden, everything in public eye, in real time as well, so that you can, anyone can look. Anyone doesn't need to be members, they can just all look in and see what's going on for members. And obviously as members join, they share their experiences. We're not doing anything. It's what's happening, and we needed to demonstrate that. And I think that was really my heart. I think the other thing is that because of what we've been through as a family, I felt it was important that I help families in some ways and carers, because in my own experience, my carers were struggling to help me. I would have my own set of frustrations, and it was neither of our faults, but we didn't know what we were dealing with, what we had to contend with. They were struggling to help me. I was struggling to move. I was in so much pain. They didn't understand the pain. The carers didn't understand how the pain medicines weren't helping, yet I took them all. They gave them to me regularly. I was on maximum MSDs, Sevrodol, patches, everything. It was literally all in one go, and still in this incredible pain. And so I could see how it was like a whole myriad of problems, even within my family. My children were witnessing those horrible screams that I showed you last time, what I went through. And I don't think that anyone should have to go through that. And I felt that my group wasn't about me. Actually, it was about all of us. It's because there was something on the other groups. There'd be different groups for different things. Like you'd have a sling group, you'd have a hernia group, you'd have I can't think of any others at the moment, vagina. So everyone was like, is it this, is it that, is it the other? And actually, I could really empathise with them all, because I found out later that I had all these multiple meshes. And that's how I was able to say that there's a problem with anything like a hernia mesh, because I had the big something there that was put in there to support whatever. And then I found that the one with the bladder slings, obviously I found on the images that I've got this sling type thing. And then there's one like the whole of the length of the pelvic floor. And this is how I was able to understand, you know what? Everyone's suffering from the mesh. It's not that problem, this problem, it's the mesh. And that, I knew the group had to be called MeSH UK, even though I wanted like the global one, I couldn't manage that. So it was like MeSH UK, I can handle that. And then obviously, when I got my records from France, suggesting that I had the TOT and several others, I really realised that actually, and it was instinct to set up a charity to help families, because they've been wronged, and it's about time somebody, I don't know, helped them. help them in a way, because it's through understanding. I don't know what the word is for that, but there is something about if you're all in this together and you're all working together, you don't have to complain, compare, compete. Everyone understands how bad it is, you know, and then hopefully then by doing what we can do, we can just give people a bit of a change from the routine of copious amounts of medicines, copious amounts of appointments, copious amount of people not understanding because it's not being understood, because people are struggling to articulate this. And I figured that it's also my duty then to try and make sure that people are being understood, because it was more harrowing not being understood. It was too macabre to go through something like this and not being supported by hospitals or doctors or any of the people that we have trusted to try and get the help that we needed. And that's how Mesh UK then became the charity, which was January in last year, 2018. And since then we've done everything we possibly can to try and help create awareness. We've created a documentary where we gave a platform again, which we paid for ourselves, a platform again for all mesh injured people to come together, and the whole documentary was totally unscripted. We never scripted anything. Every word is from the heart, and it's what we've been trying to say to people, but we've done it in a way that we create the awareness so that, you know, it can help make people understand their actual risks of this surgery, as well as the difficulties that we're facing, and also the symptoms, whether it's carers, whether it's politicians, whether it's educated or whoever. You know, at the end of the day, this is happening, and the fact that it's unscripted is magical, because there was no editing. It was so easy. It was so easy to bring together, because it was the truth. Does that make sense? I can't think of it. Oh yes, we've got.
You wanted to say about what you provide from the charity.
Oh yeah, so from the charity we provide respite breaks. They're only 3-4 day breaks, but I'm very realistic about how much money I can actually try and raise myself to send families away, and it's not easy.
And we're sending our first
family away. Yeah.
Away next week.
Next month.
Next month.
Yeah, sorry.
June, yeah.
So it's like less than a month we get to send our first family away. We got a GP referral, which is excellent, because obviously we never thought we'd really see that day happen, but actually it's happened, so I'm really pleased. And the whole myriad of symptoms came through about what this person was suffering. She was unknown to me. She's on the group, but I've never really chatted to her. She said to me, I've got 2 boys, they're teenagers now. I had a daughter, she was at home, she's moved away, got a child. And I said, I'll tell you what, I said, why don't you, because I said, I know how this works with families and mesh and everything else. Why don't you include your daughter, because I know she helped you with your boys. Why don't we send you all the way? And she's got her own baby, so it's like the first grandchild's holiday, little respite break, a change from the norm, and it's something that means something to her that she can travel to. So she's chosen it, she's thought about it, we've discussed it, we're meeting the needs of people. It doesn't matter how small it is, we're making a difference, I feel. So yeah.
Big difference, I think, because I don't think people realise how important respite breaks are.
Oh my gosh, they're not to be
I don't think
underplayed.
patients appreciate them until they've actually had one.
And I know that because when I had my spine surgery 2 years after implant, because my whole spine was just, I couldn't hardly walk after this thing, as well as spine surgery in 2 years. And I remember asking social services, is there something where I perhaps can have a little bit of help and support so that whether I can't walk after my spine surgery, if I could have something that could help. And I just knew that that would be valuable then, and that's why I've brought everything through experience into what we do now. So yeah, I can't wait till they come on back with their happy snaps. But obviously, even since then, I think we were at 20-something mark for suicides. It's not something we promote that we do, but for some reason, because we've all been through it and we've got that experience of how we feel, the numbers have sadly increased, and I think we were at 48, 49. I lost track of my own experience. Sorry, I got held up in my own, so I did lose count, but I think it's 48. But I might be wrong.
48 suicide calls.
Okay, and I would like to tell you about that, and I think that's how I can help people with understanding. So the most recent one I'm going to tell you about, and then come back to maybe mine. Joanne was the person who took the call. Thank God. The person I'm talking about has 2 small children, and she tried to hang herself. And I have to have that on my heart, and I'm not trained.
Can I continue while Candia is
Yes.
because we are very restricted for time. My name is Joanne Davies. I'm a trustee from SUK Charitable Trust, and my expertise is medical devices. Don't make me cry again. I've been consulting in industry for almost 20 years. I qualified at university in 1998 in Cardiff as a mechanical engineer in product design and manufacture. I have a history of relevant continuous professional development that includes practical training in surgical techniques. I've personally created, compiled and submitted marketing applications in more than 85 countries with a 100% success rate. These devices include every device class from lasers and intracranial pressure monitors to linear accelerators and multi-leaf collimators. I've gained a wealth of experience and insight at every level in manufacturing that includes the pharmaceuticals and the medical devices industry. I've been hired by NHS Blood and Transplant Headquarters to audit their systems, and part of my work there included the interpretation and communication of complex regulations to 32 UK satellite teams. It's also something I currently do on a daily basis. I've recently achieved verified professional qualifications in medicine as a patient healthcare coach to help MESH UK Charitable Trust members. I'm not aware of any conflicts of interest that I may have, and am recognised across the world for my professionalism and integrity. If there's anything I say that isn't clear, I'm happy for anyone to interrupt on anything I cover. First of all, I'd like to say, and put something in your mind, babies and people grow. Plastic doesn't. I'm sure we all agree that the review must be fact-based, but you may wish to re-evaluate the professional, authoritative and media evidence supplied to the review so far. Due to time constraints, I'm unable to highlight all the inaccuracies that don't align with regulation. I've sent some to you already, but I'll give some significant examples. The Permanent Secretary for the MHRA has claimed certain records don't actually exist, but they do exist, as I believe I stated last November. These exist in the form of purchase orders, invoices, kitting lists, theatre records, audit reports, quality records, etc. These may not have a trail that leads directly to patients where they've been deceived, but these documents will reveal to an extent the scale of the problem. You may wish to question how NHS staff complete so much paperwork relating to surgical procedures but cannot produce the critical evidence, which is patient records and the scale of the use of MESH. I'll put it to you that these documents can be retrieved from the supply chain already, as they are not protected by Article 20, which is the confidentiality clause within the directives. Even when I worked in the NHS in 2007, the Data Protection Act 1998 was being used to justify them not creating database records. However, quality management systems mandated these records, and the Data Protection Act just specified how they should have been kept. Regrettably, the introduction of the Data Protection Act 2018 did not result in any improvement in the situation. When marketing a device, it's mandatory for the manufacturer to consider the user's training. Oh, sorry, I've skipped a paragraph there. According to the Permanent Secretary, the safety of devices relies on the interaction of the user and the skill of the person using the product, but this is actually controlled by the manufacturer. When marketing a device, it's mandatory for the manufacturer to consider the user's training, ability, qualifications, or even any disability they may have, to ensure the device isn't rendered unsafe through reasonably foreseeable misuse. You can find this evidence in the manufacturer's risk analysis, other technical documents. It's also summarised in their CE marking application risk management report. This documentation is freely available within the supply chain, and the requirements is laid down in law. When the CMO of England, Dame Sally Davies, was asked about post-market surveillance, she had very little idea, which reminded me that until 2012, I was relying as part of my post-market surveillance for my clients on the MHRA's post-market surveillance reports, which were produced several times a year. And then at one point I realised they weren't there, and I contacted them and I said, where are your reports? I rely on them. And they said, oh, we're running a bit late. We've decided to do them less often, so they're going to be done. I think they've reduced them to twice a year, or maybe once a year instead. And that they would be ready by the February. So after the February came, and there they were, the reports. But then when I went to find them in 2012, all of a sudden they disappeared. So I contacted them and said, where are the reports I've been relying on? They said, we don't know what you're talking about. Now, the evidence of this will exist all over the world, because people have taken my records and used them in their marketing applications. So those documents that the MHR is saying doesn't exist are referencing documents all over the world. Other evidence has suggested that devices are brought to market based on substantial equivalence alone. This is not true, as every device needs safety and efficacy data according to applicable regulation. Excuse me, I've got a birth defect myself and a speech problem. Carl Hennigan informed the review that a US FDA drug license allows you to market any drugs anywhere in the world. This is also not true according to EC and UK law, and US law, and most other countries. This type of information that's left sitting in the public domain is misleading, which could lead to serious consequences. When I looked deeper, I found more and more inaccuracies in UK Gov documents, including scientific reports by expert committees. I understand the source of evidence gathered is from someone who says his qualifications include trying to get his head around regulations for 3 or 4 years. But strangely, in an area that doesn't exist for devices, the same person is also presented as an expert witness on devices in the same document. I tried to contact him by telephone in about 2012 when the post-market surveillance records went missing, and I'd seen a lot of information in the media that was inaccurate, to discuss, as I wanted to help, but he was unresponsive. Some references about devices in Hansard contain inaccuracies, and I submit that this conflicts with the Ministerial Code. Mesh UK Charitable Trust has approached both Hansard and the politician who presented these inaccuracies, but we've had no response as far as I'm aware. These errors still haven't been corrected. The media tells many sensational stories, and one is that the medicines regulations are more stringent than those for devices, yet they are not. There are different sets of rules for different products for very valid reasons. What I find most perplexing is when I disclose facts on online platforms, they appear not long after in mainstream media stories, but they're written without knowledge or understanding, and I've not seen one media article that's factual. A witness has said that all mesh isn't the same device type due to patents, but this is also incorrect. The patent system has nothing to do with differences in devices and the regulation of devices, and it's not concerned with their safety, efficacy, classification, etc. It's about intellectual property rights.
Can I just say something? Obviously, if the doctors are believing it's about patents, I'm concerned because obviously they'll be using that as a loophole. They've got this patent and they show it to the manufacturer and they'll try and find a way to get it onto the market. I'm concerned because I'm a layperson, and I just wondered if the doctors genuinely believe it's about patents.
I believe that's come about because a lot of clinicians, if you go into the patent databases, a lot of patents are bought by clinicians. the Baroness Julia Cumberledge asked John Wilkinson in one of the oral hearings, what does manufacturers' evidence show with regards to the safety and efficacy of mesh currently? Is that correct? Yes. Yeah. He didn't answer this question acceptably. The law requires manufacturers to evidence to illustrate safety and efficacy in their documentation for a device to be legally CE marked. But as I've illustrated in my written evidence, such evidence cannot exist. So it's difficult to understand how the MHRA's review of mesh could possibly have succeeded as claimed. The MHRA should have a record of this review that can be adduced in evidence. Jeremy Hunt specified vaginal mesh as part of this review. The terms of the review also includes pelvic mesh. I've asked the review team for clarification, but I've not received any, and this clarification is still needed.
Can I add something? The reason for that is it's been very hard to know how to help give you the information you need to make a fully informed decision in your report. So there's a lot more work still that we need to do to try and help you ascertain that information.
So as far as I'm aware, we have two types of mesh. We have mesh that is intended to strengthen tissue or bone, and I believe this was brought to market as being substantially equivalent to sutures, because I've read in one of the manufacturer's IFUs that sutures are safe, so let's make the mesh out of the same material as sutures. But what they didn't consider was a suture is not substantially equivalent to a permanent implant. The suture only stays in the body for a short space of time, the implant stays there forever. So they're not substantially equivalent. But now all of a sudden we have a different mesh device. It's not a tissue or bone strengthener, it's become an organ holder, which will raise that device to a class 3. So we've got the surgical mesh, the skin strengthener, which is a 2B, and now we've got the organ holder, which is a class 3. But I believe they've also moved the skin strengthener up to the class 3, which is not right. We base the classification of devices on the vulnerability of the human body. So if we manufacture a plaster and put it on here, it's class 1, but if you want to put it inside your body forever, it's a 2B, and if I put it inside your heart, it's a class 3. Does that make sense?
And the other thing I remember you teaching me was this mesh was never meant to be used as an organ holder. That's the fact, isn't it?
Yeah, mesh has been brought to market as a strengthened. I don't know what the predicate is for organ holders. Where is the predicate for organ holders? I think that needs to be asked. I wonder whether it was brought in by clinicians as an in-house design, which hasn't been through the CE marking process, or whether it's been a piece of mesh that is being used off-label. And I haven't heard these things coming up in the evidence at all. I'd like to ask you all if you have any questions at all on the evidence I've submitted, because I believe it tells you that these devices shouldn't be on the market. And I'd like you to challenge me in anything that I've said, because I won't tell you anything that's not factual. If I don't know something, I will tell you I don't know. If I know, I will tell you, or if I know where it is, I can tell you where it is and I'll go and find out. So is there anything that I've told you that you think you can challenge or anyone would like to challenge?
Well, I have to say, Joanne, quite rightly, you've been at some speed to get through all this. So I think what we need to do is to look at the results on when it's screened on the website and all the rest of it. And we've had people here taking notes, and then we can go away and think about it.
Okay.
And come back to
yeah, so it is very rushed, isn't it? We're very limited an hour. And
it's fine,
it's fine,
but we can then come back to it.
And Candia can talk for England. We need to rush it all in. Is there anything you need to determine your decision on the safety and efficacy of mesh implants. Because for a device to be certified safe and effective, it can't be safe, effective and harmful.
Well, we've had a lot of evidence from a lot of different people. And so, you know, I think a lot of what you've been telling us is quite similar to what we've heard from others, not all of it. And so it's been very useful for some of the points that you've made this afternoon. But certainly where you were talking about the different criteria, the A to C and all the, how that was all done, that's all been in the BMJ and we've read that.
Yeah.
Yes, just to say that obviously we're at this point now where we're coming to the end of our oral hearings. As you can imagine, we have a huge amount of evidence that has now come to us. And our job as a team is going to be to sift through all of that, to look where there is consistency, where there are differences, we will want to explore that. And it may well be, when I've gone through that, when the team has gone through all that, we've said, okay, we have an issue here, this doesn't reconcile. We may well be coming back to people and in fact to the patient groups and saying, can you help us with this? So as you can imagine, as we're going along, we're accumulating all this evidence, but that process is about to begin when we finish the oral hearings. It's a very clear next phase where we begin to analyse everything, and I mean everything that we have received, and there will no doubt be times when we have to say, there is an inconsistency here, maybe we should ask you, maybe we need to go back to others. So you won't be hearing in from us, we will be back asking our questions.
Okay. There's another issue with the mesh. It's acting like a medicine on the human body. Devices don't do that. If you sit in a wheelchair, it doesn't do anything to you, yeah? And devices aren't supposed to do that. We can, I mean, really what mesh is doing, it should be in the medicines classification because of the way it's acting on the human body. And we can't have both, can we? It's either a device or a medicine.
What about a heart valve?
A heart valve is a device.
But it's acting on the human body.
No, you shouldn't be having any adverse effects on the human body, like nerve pain. And
no, not adverse effect, but it is biocompatible with the human body.
It should be biocompatible, yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
So in that sense, mesh may or may not be biocompatible. That's one of the things to discuss. However, it's made of biological material or a plastic material, an artificial material, and it's inside the body. So I don't quite understand the difference between a device. I happen to have a heart valve.
Yeah.
Made of calpericardium.
Made of?
Calpericardium.
I haven't come across that material.
Well, it's from a cow.
A cow?
And
yeah. Oh gosh, yes, I have come across that. I've looked at it myself a few weeks ago, yeah. They're not biocompatible, actually.
Well, mine's been there quite a while.
Just as a comparison, as I understand it as a layperson, there's a difference between you had a need to save your life.
A life.
This is not a life-saving
device.
I'm
not discussing that.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand the difference you're making. I'm not discussing whether they're good or bad. That's
no, it wasn't that I was suggesting.
I don't think I've been given enough opportunity to explain this. And
would it be better to write it?
I can write it all out.
That would probably
that
be
really
better.
Probably.
Because then we can get more detail and a really thorough understanding, and that would help.
That really would help, I think.
I don't believe that anybody has presented any evidence to illustrate the efficacy and safety of surgical mesh, Primados or valproate. I don't believe that you have evidence to review this. We have a process when we bring products to market, and we haven't. I don't think you can pinpoint where the process has gone wrong. When we, even before devices are manufactured, we have a materials manufacturer, and he's got legal requirements as well. So if I'm going to buy a material off a manufacturer, he's going to have a material safety status sheet, and that is that's governed by a directive Yeah, and he has to follow that directive. And on his material safety data sheet, it should say it's not to be used in the human body. So when the manufacturer buys that material in, did the system fail there because it didn't say that on the sheet? Or did it say it can be used in the human body because someone has made a mistake somewhere along the line, and we need to pinpoint that mistake. I've noticed as well in the oral hearings you've been asking people what they thought about the new regulations. They're absolutely awful and they stifle innovation. I was speaking to a manufacturer last night who was explaining to me he's got 26 substantially equivalent devices. So these are syringes. 26 syringes, they all do exactly the same thing, they're made of exactly the same material. But he's now being told that rather than have one clinical evaluation for all 26, he needs 26 of them. Now these 26 have been sent out for Indian people to write, they've been reviewed by Polish people, and he's had them back, and they've told him to sign them. And he says, I can't sign them, I need to review them first. And he's reviewed them, and they're incorrect. And this is how it's going to stifle industry. And I don't think that when we leave the European Economic Area, we should be applying those regulations and using the notified body system. I think it's dangerous.
What would you say we should do?
I think we need a new system, and I think it should be built up from the 9342 EEC regulations, and just to make sure they are actually applied in their entirety, because there's nothing wrong with them. We do have safe and effective devices on the market, and most of them in fact are. The media stories on hundreds of thousands of adverse event reporting things in more than all the other systems in the world is totally out of, what's the word?
It doesn't do anything, does it?
It doesn't do anything. I could make a batch of 1,000 needles and send them out and then realise, oh no, I need to bring them back and do something, so I'll report that as a matter of course. It doesn't mean thousands of devices have harmed people. It means I've just done my job to keep people safe. So it really does exaggerate things, and that's not the way things are. I've noticed as well that they've put in medical doctors in the new regulations as being able to do my job. They're not engineers, and I appreciate doctors, but I actually asked the doctor to write a clinical evaluation for a client, and it was like an eBay review. The doctor said it was nice, it felt nice, it looked nice, but we're not looking for that, we're looking for safety and efficacy, and it really was waste of a few £100. Yeah, I think that is a huge problem.
So, I mean, you're advocating really a return to the new approach and much more engineering based.
It is engineering, isn't it?
The new approach was, yes.
Yeah.
Much more strong.
It needs engineers. And I don't mean biomedical science engineers, I mean engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers.
And you're saying that's relevant to MESH?
I'm saying it's relevant to MESH, yes.
All medical devices.
Certainly, all medical devices. I'm not saying that a doctor can't be an engineer, or an engineer can't be a doctor, but you do need the correct training. You can't. Manufacturers are having these certifications pulled, not through their incompetence, but through the medical doctors' incompetence. They're coming out to do audits, and they're telling you to do things that are incorrect, and they don't align with regulation either.
I think the thing is, how I see it is, there seems to be a lot of clinicians in this whole medical mesh device, or whatever you want to call it, and yet there doesn't seem to be the other people in it to make a balance. Does that make sense? So it's very weighted on clinicians and what they want for the needs of the business, not necessarily, they might mean well, but it's no balance for thought and like engineers, they'll think things through properly. They'll do it mathematically, and I think that's what I've seen. Even when I went to the MHRA, I was talking to clinicians, and I also remember in that conversation as well, they were quite happy to talk to me, but they shushed her, and I thought it's strange because it has to be a conversation for all of us. You know, it's about all of us, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the other thing that caused me concern, going back to your earlier point, was about the effects of the MHRA in Europe. And I know I mentioned that when because if they've implemented the new regulations across Europe, it is a grave concern for everybody, you know. So we do need to do something with it. Obviously, I can't. Yeah, she's your lady, you know.
We're short of time. You need to say what you want the patient.
Have you got invoice?
We're 10 to 5.
Are we all right for time if we go a little bit over?
We've still got some time.
Yeah.
So
I've still got loads to go through, and you have as well.
she's regulations based. She's replying back to that.
The permanent secretary is accountable.
He is
for the
accountable.
work of the MHRA.
Thank you.
We've got to take steps. We can't let this get, you know, in Europe, and we just find it too much.
Do you know, it's taken me until this week to find out who was in charge of the MHRA.
I thought I was talking to the right
because
person.
of this review, and I feel things like this need to be addressed as well, so that when we look to UK government, we can see a clear organisational structure and we can see who is actually accountable. Because if I could have found the permanent secretary in late 2000, I could have, sorry, not 2000, in about 2007, 8, 9, I could have been calling out to them then, saying, hello, something's going wrong. And I have not been able to do that.
Well, we asked him specifically this question.
I know.
And the answer was that he is accountable for the work of the MHRA.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shall I continue?
Yeah. I think you've got lots to get through.
yeah,
We need
I
the
have.
information.
Jeremy Hunt stated that in many ways our regulatory system is world leading, and I can assure you it isn't. When I started working in industry, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency wasn't in existence. I relied on superior systems such as the US Food and Drug Administration to help me. The FDA helps and engages in global industry immensely. When the MHRA did materialise, the systems were weak in comparison to most of the rest of the world, and still are today. I've been in a training session with the MHRA, with the font is blurred, you can't hear what they're saying, they don't know what you're saying, and it's completely ineffective. I find much of the information incorrect and unreliable, from online information to simple telephone queries. When it comes to complex engineering issues, there is nobody at the MHRA who is able to assist. I'm appalled by the misinformation in the public domain being supplied to global industry from the MHRA. The MHRA's reaction to any challenge is always defensive, even when patient safety is at risk. I approach notified bodies and their industry representatives to help to put things right, but I found their knowledge and experience severely lacking. Don't get me wrong, there are some very good auditors in industry, but they're all one-trick ponies because of the way industry operates. With someone doing one job, they do another job, and nobody's connected, nobody knows what the other person's doing, and that's exactly the way it works. And I don't believe any of the notified bodies or their auditors have raised a red flag, or we wouldn't be here today. It's clear to me that the people who direct the MHRA have very little understanding of the systems they're supposed to be leading. Their reactions to certain questions and their inability to come up with straightforward, easy answers illustrates this. To direct a system, you have to have knowledge of the system. A system cannot direct itself. Imagine an orchestra with an unqualified, inexperienced, untrained conductor. To me, that's the MHRA.
Mine, I'm afraid, is about patience still, because I still don't feel that the review team, despite our efforts, we are all time limited. There's a lot you've got to get through. There's a lot we've personally got to get through, as well as the group and things like that. So I try to depict a load of symptoms, and I think that we probably won't have time to necessarily go through them, but they were through a tribunal. Before I even knew about the mesh world, they are from a tribunal perspective. So I was trying to articulate the sort of problems that we go through. Do you mind if I just flick through? So from the head, migraine, cluster headaches, sensitive to scalp, under scalp thickened, can't wear my hair up, can't have hairbands, can't stand to have it brushed, cognitive malfunctions, pathways for communication internally and externally are compromised. My ears, hyperacusive, sensitivities to noise that I can go from deaf to not being able to bear any noise at all, and sometimes I can't hear at all. And I can't explain why I have the fluctuations. Swellings to the face, spasms to both sides of the face, numbness, tingling, especially below the mouth, pain in the cheek muscles from spasms. When they spasm, they get so painful. There's nothing that shakes it. There's nothing that helps. Eyes, twitch, involuntary, visual disturbances, central, peripheral, hypnagogic hallucinations. ORL showed that I was off balance. I can't remember what it is, 13 degrees off balance, which shows that, you know, if your core stability, it's your core stability this test was done. So it absolutely affects everything to do with your pelvic, absolutely. Stabbing pains, red eyes, very wet, overly wet. Eyes struggle to move to positions, they get stuck. And you can't move them. You can move your head, but they get stuck. What's that? Pain also accompany it when I look up and to one side. So I was struggling to try and, anyway, it got stuck. There could be an overwhelming pressure behind the eyes, very, very painful. Okay, nose, swollen, very sore to touch. Redness comes and goes, but it's relieved if I don't wear my glasses, so it's all to do with the pressure of the glasses. Nasal drips, hurts to breathe sometimes. Mouth, tongue swells, causing slurred speech, so people don't understand me. It goes blue to purple tinge, pain, spasms, and recesses right back to the point of nearly swallowing. It was, which can last for hours, daily, every day. Dribbling, breathlessness, slow tongue movement, dribbling, don't feel right straight away, affects drinking and eating too. Throat, redness externally, regularly, sore throats, throat enlarges, sensitivities, difficult swallowing and reflux. Shoulders, due to the falls, because I was having falls, damages to the shoulder, which has resulted in restrictive movement, sensitivity to pain, particularly in this area, that makes them become rigid, mostly on my right side though. Arms, affected by shoulders, and it feels like my bones are on fire. The lower right arm, stabbing, nerve pain, numbness, tingling, mostly left side, but it affects right side too. I have involuntary movements, like I can throw sugar, and I didn't want to throw my sugar, I want to put my sugar in my cup. Things like that. Tremors, unsteadiness, and weakening sensation, strength, sensitive to food, etc. Difficulties with skin, like severe hives. Had breast pain. This doesn't, and this is a problem with the arms and wearing bras, and it affects your breasts, and the pain is so immense within your breast. And I've been undergoing yearly mammograms for both. What was found in the mammograms was white matter, aka known as white mice. Hands, swelling, tightness, clawing, where you're clawing up, there's nothing to do. Puffiness between the joints, reddening, thickening palms, dehydrosis. Reduced sensations affecting grip, sensitivities to cold, heat, cognitively I have accidents. I do not register how something hot is, how hot it is. Joint pain and wrists and affecting all hands. Ectopic type heartbeats, which can be, I guess then you'd mention ectopic because I don't really know what that means into this day. No treatment suitable. Diagnosed when pregnant, and then I had to have a termination for that. So was it me, or is it the fact that I'm sick? chest pain, shallow breathing, do not feel oxygenated, shortness of breath, little or no exertion, constriction around the chest, and then stomach, spasms, feels twisted, always feeling nauseous, rigidity in the stomach, extreme discomfort, had a sensation that something is pushing my ribs out, a point of breaking. It felt like this was enlarging and pushing my ribs right out. Bowel, spasms, excruciating pains, having slowing, skewering pains, lower left side, twitching, pulsing, sensation, rectum coming from lower spine, rectal bleeding with severe diarrhea or severe retention, loss of sensation and throbbing. I struggle to get to the toilet as my muscle sphincter is weakened and incontinence occurs. More recently though, dairy, and this is not on here but I've added it as a note, having dairy, becoming allergic to dairy, what it does with the mesh in situ, the bowel then purges. Imagine something sharp while your bowel's doing that. You just want to die. You don't want to live through that. That's what dairy does to me now. So obviously that was what was happening then, this is what's happening now. Hips, hyper joint mobility, grinding pain, sacroiliac joint, feels like grit in the joints, feels like going to dislocate, extrusive, painful. Genitals, photos available as I've demonstrated before. Angry red connective tissue perhaps, prolapse visible. There seems to be a prolapse. Imagine that. That's what I reported back then in the tribunal. Cause unknown, present to communicate. Been left with a leakage, question mark, fistula I put in. I have an acid loss and smells bad at times. Hysterectomy was natural route. They fixed a prolapse too, whatever that meant, because I didn't even know if they fixed a bowel bladder. I didn't know all of these things. This is just for this tribunal. I have an acid loss that smells bad at time. I went swimming this one time, and because I was told to go swimming, I should go swimming, I should do something positive to help myself. Went swimming, and as I went swimming, I didn't feel very well, but I pushed myself. I wanted to do it. It's just gentle. It's not very deep pool, yeah. So when I came out of the water, I managed to get myself in the shower to wash off, going out for the evening meal. 3 hours later, after that swimming, hot acid, chlorine smelling came out in a gush from my inside of my body. And it came through my vagina, down my leg, all the way almost to the ankle. So obviously the chlorine had got in, and I questioned this with my doctor. I said, could this osmosis, because I remember it from school when I was studying science, biology, whatever, could osmosis have occurred where the pool water would go into your vagina? I said, I've not had that before. No, don't be so silly, ridiculous, go away. I did not know I had mesh. It's important to note because these are not things that have been written before. Also contracted hospital virus 3 times. I was very poorly. No bacteria present at last swab. Under gynecologist, bed sores in groin recurring since over 1 year. Further difficulties, swollen glands, groin, nerve pain. And that we know now is exit wounds from the product. Legs, loss of sensation, numbness, tingling, spasticity, and restless leg. Bones in upper legs on fire, searing pain, legs give no way for no reason, to my mind at the time, causing falls, tremors and steadiness, weakness, involuntary movements in right leg. Feet, cramps, loss of legs, loss of sensation, feels like toes aren't there and cannot feel left foot more than I can with my right foot. Again, spasticity, and then we go into walking, weakness, vision. I'm going to skip a lot of it just to give you a better idea of what's going on. Cognitive, falls, bladder and bowel, sexual problems, ruined our marriage, spine, skin, and then several diagnoses, I will read that. Over a period of time, severe chronic fatigue, ME type thing, fibromyalgia, chronic widespread pain, arthritis, query, von Willebrand's disease, because my blood wasn't clotting properly, so they wondered if I had that. Luckily I got ruled out, but it shows you it was affecting our blood. IBS, diverticulitis, chronic stomach and abdominal pain, bowel and bladder incontinence, post-operatic amnesia, relentless fatigue leading to pain seizures, shortness of breath with little or no exertion, fistula, spasticity, hypermobility, all of these are diagnosis, hypermobility, muscular dystrophy, adenomyosis was the start of all of this, angioedema with urticaria, dehydrosis, sleep apnea, 5 days through dehydrated at the last MRI on my spine, previous x-ray showed scoliosis, hypothyroidism, obesity through lack of mobility, sensitive to foods, light, sounds, etc. As you can see, there was a great deal mentally to contend with. Just to name a few that I can recall, best I can do with assistance for now. Chronic lower back, And basically I worked up until this what I'm saying, and I wasn't allowed to continue, no job suitable for me from the here on in. So people in my life, I wrote a whole list, all the medical people that were in there's quite a few at the time, and then there was other people that I looked to try and get myself to help at the same time. Yes, the ultrasound scans, we want to know more about scans, don't we?
People are saying that they're going for ultrasound scans, and sometimes it detects the mesh, sometimes it doesn't. I've asked the surgeons on Twitter to go and check the frequency of the ultrasound scans, because the way the ultrasound works is you've got a sound wave that goes and it hits something, and you're going to get a different reading if it hits something hard from if it hits a piece of metal to a piece of wood. The reading is going to be different. So when you've got a piece of plastic in the human body, it might be soft when it goes in, it might be like crisp eventually, and that may explain why some women are going for scans and sometimes the mesh is showing and sometimes it isn't. I wanted to make that point.
When we went to that event though, I met with a radiologist, and he explained to me, because he does like the scanning and he's freelance, and he explained it to me. Basically the sound waves or whatever hits the mesh, and it can explain that there's mesh there, and it might look like it's fine, but it doesn't go beyond that to show what damage is occurring the other side, which I thought was very fascinating to hear that.
I also wanted to ask why people like notified bodies and manufacturers, organisations such as TOPRA haven't been involved in this review. Or have they been involved in this review? Because I haven't seen, because they are all part of this. Well, TOPRA is not part of the system, but they do have professionals working for them. I've been to some of their training sessions, and you can't fault what they do. Whereas I've been to other training sessions, and you just know that what they're putting into the public domain is misinformation. I've never heard misinformation coming from TOPRA.
And then
I think they teach the devices course in oh gosh, I can't remember the name. My memory's dreadful. That's why I do this job, because everything's always there and I can go back to it. But they do a master's degree in devices, and I've been on one of their courses, and they are excellent. And you may wish to approach them.
Joanne, perhaps you could write to us on that.
yeah.
Yes, definitely.
But while you're on the topic,
There's another issue that patients have asked me to raise. They're having mesh implanted with staples and things that are being left in. When staples are regulated, they don't go under the same regulations as other medical devices. They're low, they go in, they're taken out, they're thrown away. Yeah? But I believe that these things are being left in them as implants, and they need to be regulated as implants and not disposable staples. And another thing I don't think is happening is, are these staples being tested with the mesh? Because that is a legal requirement as well.
do you remember last time I showed you a piece of mesh that we brought in? So we took images with her super duper camera.
And that's what I've passed over there. Somebody has also said in the evidence that the mesh doesn't migrate and break off. And there's a blown up image of the mesh that we have that actually shows the filament, and the other one is a screenshot with it blown up so you can see it more clearly, which looks like a hair, but you would not see that with the human eye.
Right, thanks very much. I have to say, I'm afraid we are now coming to the end, so if there are final comments you want to make, now's your moment.
Yes, there's something to read here. I'm going to read it, paraphrase as it's been passed to me. We've mentioned on several occasions that an increasing number of cases are coming to light where the use of mesh in hernia and similar surgery has resulted in serious chronic pain and related issues. A member of our group was recently seen by one of the UK's top specialists in peripheral nerve injuries, and the initial remarks made by the surgeons are very significant. He said that 30% of hernia repairs using mesh have unsatisfactory outcomes, varying from minor discomfort to disabling pain. This, of course, is a far higher proportion than we had previously believed to be the case. He went on to explain that the team was reluctant to accept referrals because of such cases because If they accepted all such referrals, they would never get time to treat any other patients. In other words, those patients are still not receiving any care. What this fundamentally means is that limiting scope of the review, as you have over half the damage and suffering caused by mesh has been excluded. And if you are still precluded from including it, then we would ask, for the sake of fairness and balance, the extent of these cases to be at least mentioned in your final report, and the urgent need for similar review into the harm done in the cases made abundantly clear. I have something else that I'd like to say.
Can I make my final point, if you don't mind? The regulations were brought in 1993. We have problems, the MHRA isn't listening, they're not removing mesh. We shouldn't be in a review, we should be following the regulations which are meant to deal with what's happening, yeah? So if we can't get mesh removed from the market via the MHRA, where do we go? I want amalgam taken off the market as well, so where do we go? Because we're lost, or do I approach the permanent secretary with this question?
This is a question to try and ban mesh, is that what you're saying?
To get mesh off the market, yes.
Well, where would you go?
Well, that would fall under the European regulatory regime because of the way they're regulated, and therefore, in terms of you would need, I would guess, I mean, are you talking individual mesh products or mesh as a class of products?
Sorry?
Are you talking individual mesh products or mesh as a total class of products?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Are you talking about a particular mesh kit, or are you talking about every single mesh product?
I'm talking about surgical mesh used as a scaffold. That is one type of mesh. And I'm talking about the ones they're using as organ holders, which I don't know what the intent, well, it's to hold up an organ, that's the intended use. To get those off the market, and amalgam. Last time I was here, I mentioned that amalgam will be next, and it was only last night I checked, and I think about 7 years ago, they started the mass claims in America for amalgam. Now the regulations say that we don't use anything if a safer alternative exists, and it does, and I think it's important that that comes off the market. So where do I go? Because the MHRA isn't helping us, and it's why we're here.
Well, we certainly, amalgam's not within our scope.
No.
So we can't help with that.
All right.
So where do we go?
I just wanted to say something before we do all sort of go and tie up. So I went for MRIs, and I'll have to send you these images probably to upload to the thingy, your thing later. So that is mesh that's around the bladder neck. I don't know if you can see that from there, and you can see it's quite clearly is twisted. And that was done with gadolinium in a local hospital close to me. The other one was, when you see that, you can see there's something that's not anatomically correct all along the pelvic floor at all. And you can see that it's like a strange shape there that doesn't match any organ within the human body, compared to when I went to France for a scan. They did a gel with gadolinium enhanced, injected it into the vagina there, and you can see it's flagging up something that's not anatomically correct as well. So that was what I wanted to show you, because it's important. There's a little bits of information I wanted to update you very briefly. Since I last saw you, something not organic tore through my belly button, and that's taken 2 months to heal. Every time it heals, something cuts through, and it's excruciatingly painful. So that's in addition to my other injuries as well. And I found an image that gives you, it's not my image, this next one, I found it online. It's of a fella, just so you know, it's a guy picture. And what it shows is how his veins and everything are right on an edge. Now, underneath my skin, even now, my legs and everything were all like that. Like I couldn't hardly move, and I was in so much pain and struggling. And you can still feel them in my legs. But this was affecting the whole anatomy to the point where I was being strangled by something like this that I could feel under the skin. So infections, that sort of thing. The other thing I wanted to mention is Valves have all of these mesh centres on their website. Out of them, I've crossed off all the ones that I've been to in my journey. Okay, so I've been to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. It's about 5 or 6 that I've been to since these have been on there. And in all of that time, I'm still sitting here giving you evidence, telling you we're not being helped. So while it's a wonderful romantic notion that there's all these mesh centres, actually I don't believe that they can do anything, because otherwise I'll be saying, do you know, there's a wonderful mesh centre, I've been helped and they've done their very best. I haven't found that. I've had 2 surgeries, one the day before I gave oral evidence, another one since. I am a BMI patient, a Nuffield, a Spire Health patient and an NHS patient, and across the globe as well. And in all of those instances, how come I'm still struggling and still in incredible pain? Do you remember I mentioned about suicide? Very briefly, the pain was so bad as I tried to sit up. I've never seen this before, I've witnessed my own suicide from the pain as an instant reaction to the pain. I don't think that way, I'm a very positive person, but the pain is so bad, you're seeing literally an inch gash there, both sides, tidy, no blood, because it didn't happen, it's what you're visualising at the time of pain. It's wrong. It's just all wrong that this is happening and we're not being helped. I don't think there is such a thing, because otherwise I would be sitting here telling you, yes, we've finally got the help, we've finally got the understanding, and this is another reason why I think a ban should happen, because I don't believe that we can be helped. Otherwise I'll be telling you differently. So thank you for being patient.
I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry to hear all about that and how you suffered, and thank you very much, Joanne, for all the evidence you've given us. And if we have any queries, we'll come back to you.
I would like to hand this, if that's all right.
Yes.
This is critical. They have just introduced endocrine disruptors as materials that can be used in medical devices. There's a new recommendation defining nanomaterials, and we cannot verify what nanomaterials do in the human body, and this is the next thing that's being brought in with the new regulations, and
it's not good enough to add it to the IFUs.
I'm afraid we've got to call this to a close now. But thank you very much indeed, and thank you for the supporters for coming as well.
Thank you.